This is another edition of Footy Talk, your place for the latest news, interviews and analysis from the world of AFL, and it is another Tuesday morning, so we are joined as always by Nick Riewoldt over there in the States. Good morning to you, Roo, but before we get onto the footy, we might have to touch on what's been just a pretty quiet week over there in Pennsylvania and in the USA. Just give us a bit of an insight from being on the ground over in America. What's been the fallout from the Trump assassination attempt? I know we're not political on this show, but it's worth touching on.
Yeah. No, when we try not to be too political, Joey, but it's hard to avoid it over here at the moment. Holy shit! It is live TV. I mean, that's the hardest thing to wrap your head around. This all went down on live television. So I walked in the door, Cass said, "Turn the TV on. You're not going to believe what's just happened." And then it just mind-boggling. Almost becomes a bit of a form of, I guess, entertainment for people in a way, which is a terrible thing to say and a way to approach it when clearly lives have been lost. But it's as intense, divided a community as I've really ever seen, because depending on which side you lean, left or right, it's either conspiracy theories set up by the Republicans, or it's the Democrats that are to blame for sort of inciting violence in the way that they've posed Donald Trump as such a threat. So there's no middle, which I think that's true for most political landscapes now. That the middle seems to, or at least the sort of the spread from left to right seems to be getting further and further apart. But incredible.
Is it just talk? Is that all anyone's talking about over there at the moment? Like, it seems like it's every day. It's one of everyone's mocking either Biden for the way that he's presenting every time he speaks publicly, or it's Trump. Is that all anyone's talking about in the USA?
Yeah, it's dominating. Absolutely. I mean, it's hard. It's kind of hard to. It's like footy in Melbourne. It's hard to avoid politics in the US right now. That's probably the best analogy that I can make. And then again, depending on who you're talking to, there's no middle. It's like you got to pick your targets depending on which way you lean as to who you talk to. But you would think there's still a fair bit to play out. The one thing that resonated, I guess, with me was pretty amazing in the face of that sort of adversity to then be able to stand up and pump your fist at the crowd. That's just something I can't wrap my head around. But
I know.
Yeah, amazing times, amazing scenes, and a lot still to play out here, obviously. But wow. What a time to be over here and seeing it all unfold.
Yeah, whether you like him or not, that is an iconic image. And maybe you need more sport in the US. It's not a great time because there's no NFL, there's no NBA, so there's probably not enough sport to talk about. And politics is dominating.
US sports. I mean, if you're into the other sports, like was it might have been yesterday. Yesterday was amazing. There's the Tour de France was on. I think they were in the Pyrenees yesterday in the morning. Yeah. And then Euro was on, and then Copa America was on. So there was a full day yesterday, which was good. It was a nice change from Fox and CNN to some sport.
Well, let's get into the AFL, because that's where people are listening for. They're not listening for your thoughts or mine on politics, but it was worth touching on. But what is your thought of the week after round 18 in the AFL?
Yeah, like I do most sort of Sundays, Monday for you guys is I look at the ladder and I sort of look at who's where and how it's going to play out. And I was just struck by the evenness. The gap between 2nd and 11th on the ladder is one game, and then you go down to 13, and I think it gets out to 2 games. So I can't remember a season where it's looked like that. I know a lot of the narrative is around, it's such a wide open season. But then you look at the very top of the ladder, and the Sydney Swans standing there alone on top. And it just got me thinking about the role of the media in trying to pontificate on who's where and who's going to do what and how the rest of the season is going to play out, and making a case for every team from 2nd to 13th, or from 1st to 13th in this case. And I wonder if it's not like 2022, where we did the same thing, where Geelong had a little bit of a wobble sort of 2/3 of the way through the season. But then when it was all said and done, it was the most predictable premiership we've seen in a long, long time, because, the rest of the competition was very even, but they were so far and away the best team in it. Number one offense, number one defense, And the last 5 games of the season really franked their dominance in what was a year where there was no alternative. It was only going to be Geelong that won the premiership. You know, they won their last 5 games by 60, 85, qualifying final by a goal. You know, they had a nervous final and then come out and you win the prelim by 71 and 81. And I think we are destined for that sort of year with the Sydney Swans.
Yeah, it's a great call, Roo. It does feel like that. I mean, they are 3 games clear and 25% clear on top of the ladder. So everyone is fascinated about 2nd to 13th, but are we chatting about who's going to be the second best team this year and actually forgetting about what's hitting us in the face? And I think you're probably right. Now, of course, we're not going to know that until after the grand final, and most likely we're going to look back and say, well, this was the obvious premiership of all time. So in a year where we're saying it's the most even of all time, we might actually be going, no, this was the biggest one-horse race that we have seen forever in a day. So that is going to be interesting. But I suppose our job is to try and keep everyone else engaged. It'd be boring media coverage if we just said, well, everyone else, you're playing for second. We've got our premier and we move on. So we are trying to keep it interesting. But it does lead to this weekend's game, Sydney Swans going up to the Gabba to play probably who is the second best team in the competition right now in regards to form. I think they've won 6 of their last 7, Brisbane. They've jumped to the top 4 of the ladder. They've already had the strong credentials from previous years. If Sydney go to the Gabba and beat the Brisbane Lions, then maybe everyone else might start saying, okay, all right, let's get a reality check here. It is Sydney's to lose, and everyone else is playing for second. But we know stranger things have happened, Rui. Some teams can go 20-2 at the top of the ladder and then get beaten grand final day. We know that can happen as well, as we have seen. Hey, leads on to.
What'd you do that for?
Well, I mean, just got to remind people,
Wow, it out. Remember a good day.
Things can happen in prelims and grannies. We know that firsthand. Hey, leads into my thought too about everyone's talking about the evenness of the competition. Why is it so even? Why can 13th beat second and everyone? And when I keep looking at it and diving deeper and doing what I do, is I think that it's because nearly every team plays the same sort of way now. Every team has got system and shape and team defence and role players and how they set the field, and wingers keep their width and half forwards are role players. That for me, at the end of the day, and everyone's training standards are the same, the soft cap has meant that no one's really got a big advantage on anyone else in regards to what they can do preparation-wise or technology-wise to get ahead of the curve. So in some ways, the AFL have got what they want. So what is standing out for me this year more than ever is that it is driven by your superstars. Your best 3 to 5 players are determining whether your team wins or loses on a weekend. And that probably goes to the fact of why the Brownlow medal now, you need to be polling 30-plus votes to win it, because the same 3 to 5 players on every team are the only ones that are polling votes, because they are the match winners, they are the difference. And you only have to look at the Sydney Swans, and we've spoken about their superstars and the form they're in, and you look at the flip side of a team like Collingwood, and only at the moment it's Nick Dacos, and then everybody else this year hasn't been at their absolute best, and it's why the Pies probably are the way they are. You think about, some other teams, Geelong now, when Dangerfield played at the start of the year, and now that Dangerfield's back, and he polled the 9 out of 10 coaches' votes, why Geelong look completely different. Toby Green back to his best form on the weekend. The Giants, no surprise, they look so much different. You can go through all the teams, and maybe really it's why teams like St Kilda and Adelaide and a few other sides are struggling, because you can't really identify, who is your 3 to 5 absolute superstars that can take a hold. Adelaide probably do with Rankin and Dawson and a couple of others, but you've got to find them if you don't have them, and they've got to be in their best form when they play, and that is the difference. And when you've seen it with Carlton's midfield and their forwards, and we can go on, but that is a big factor. So keep an eye on that for your team. Port Adelaide's a great example. When the Port mids are up and going and flying, they don't look like losing, and then when they're off, they look at a completely different team. So that's a big one for me. But I want to try and chat to you now about the big news this week, and it's going to continue to create headlines, was the suspensions to Charlie Cameron and Toby Bedford for their tackles, both getting 3-week suspensions. And I think that's the key here that is sitting uncomfortably with most footy fans, is that, in particular for me, the Toby Bedford tackle, which you haven't seen, check it out, but most have. For me, it's almost the perfect textbook tackle, and he's going at the moment to miss 3 weeks of footy. It doesn't sit well because I think the guidelines are all now out of whack. I understand we're trying to protect the head, and rightly so, but it can't be 3 weeks for a tackle like that, even with Charlie Cameron, where I think Duggan contributes to it by trying to shrug out of the tackle, and his momentum almost helps pull Charlie Cameron down with him. We can't have this, but where's the system at the moment? It's all over the shop.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't feel like the framework's caught up with the interpretation and the sensitivities around concussions. So clearly that needs an overhaul. But you're right. I mean, you can't. I don't think you can have a player missing 3 weeks for an act that had no malice in it.
It was just it was momentum in the tackle. There was no second action. There was
zero malice, zero sort of secondary force. So I agree. I think we've blinked and we've gone too far. Well, I mean, we've had this conversation 3, 4, 5 times this year, and we're still having it. So clearly, the sensitivity around concussion is dominating results. And until we sort of overhaul that system at the end of the year, I'm not sure anything is going to change between now and then.
No, that's right.
So really, if you're a player and you're finding yourself in a situation where you're attempting to tackle, which is what everyone's coached, everyone's instructed to do. I mean, you can't not tackle. What are the coaches going to say? What are the commentators going to say? What are the fans going to say? But you really are in the lap of the gods.
Yep.
And if it goes a little bit wrong due to gravity, the speed of the player and the direction that they're going, then you are at the mercy of whatever consequences arise from that situation. That's really it now. It's lucky dip.
It is. And you're right, it's all about the framework. Because, I mean, if Bedford and Charlie Cameron, we woke up yesterday and they got 1 week suspensions, I think we could all probably go, geez, they're unlucky, but we understand the lay of the land. 1 week, sit out and you're back. But to class these as severe because they got concussion is where it's gone wrong now, because the threshold for concussions is different for every single person. And you mentioned that even personal experience.
This is a point. Toby Bedford could come back in 4 weeks, play his first game, execute the exact same tackle in the exact same way, head hits the ground with the exact same force, and a player gets up, is unfazed, because has less sensitivity to a head knocking concussion. Because I know, at the end of my career, I was getting hits in the face, similar to Norton. You get a backhander in the face. I was way more sensitive to a concussion or susceptible to a concussion late in my career compared to early in my career. Maybe because of the cumulative head knocks. I'm not sure of the reason, but that's again where there's another layer of lucky dip, roll the dice to what's going to happen when you lay a tackle now.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and they're both going to take to the tribunal, and as we sit here today, no one knows what that's going to look like. Depends on how good the lawyer is and how good they can argue their case, and in Dangerfield's case, how well you can present and argue your own case. So that's going to be fascinating, but I think we're all in agreement the system, the tribunal, and that the framework needs an overhaul at the end of the year. We can't have 3-week bans for those sorts of tackles, but we are thinking of the players that do get some concussion. Hey, I want to ask you about the Pies. Rui, another loss. That's 3 on the trot against the Cats on Friday night, and they now slip to 12th and are in danger of missing the finals. At what point do you fight tooth and nail and you scrap and claw and do everything you can to try and limp in? Or is this a year where it's like Geelong last year, everything just went wrong, coming off a premiership, injuries, banged up, not their year, regroup, set themselves and try and have another proper crack at it next year? You're not saying they check out of this year, but is it starting to look like it's just all too difficult for them this season?
Yeah, it's definitely too soon to be giving up on this year. I think for the reason that you highlighted earlier, they still have stars.
Yep.
They still have stars, and if the stars get hot, I'm not prepared to write them off.
Right.
Because I think when you've done what they've done, you earn that level of trust where you come off a team belief-wise too late, not too early. So I'm going to jump off them later than I will earlier, because of the star power, the fact that they've been there and they've done that, and if they find themselves in the finals, they win. They win 1, they win 2, and they find themselves there on prelim final day. Who knows? The Gully, Dacos, Pendlebury plays a blinder. They get hot and they find a way to come out and get it done. At the moment, it doesn't look likely. But I still think they have that potential because of how deep how deep they back from the star power point of view.
Yeah, they're always a threat offensively, and I've said that, and that's probably why they've been streaky this year, because they can get hot even in a quarter, and we've seen it in games. But for me, it's the other side of the ball that they're just not investing in the defensive elements when they don't have the footy, the defensive running, those little things that you need to really be on the top of your game to win a premiership. They're just off, and they've been off most of the year, I think, in that facet. So unless that clicks, we know the offensive talent's there, but it's going to be a big watch. The other big watch, talk about inconsistency, is the Western Bulldogs. They are the most consistently inconsistent team we've seen. It's been the same case for 4 to 5 years. They have a massive win against Carlton, and this was a rarity. It wasn't off the back of Bontempelli. He was relatively quiet. Treloar was laid out with injury, but it was some other superstars that stepped up. Bailey Dale's always had talent, been a bit inconsistent, but it was Jamar Eagle-Hagan who was best on ground on the weekend. It'd be great to see, Rui. You know how it takes for some key forwards, takes some longer than others to develop. He hasn't developed at the rate he would have liked this year, but he was awesome on the weekend.
He was. We were saying the same things last year at various stages, that we thought, okay, the penny drop moment, this is the time when he stamps himself as a superstar of the game. So at the moment, he's in the camp of, is he going to be an inconsistent player who's capable of match-winning performances one every 5 weeks? Or is he going to work his way into being a bona fide week in, week out, Charlie Kerner, you know what you're going to get type? Don't know. I don't know which way it's going to go for Jamara. Clearly a really, really talented guy. So on the Dogs more broadly though, are you now in the believer camp, or you think they're too streaky to achieve much this year?
Yeah, I'm still in the camp, too streaky to achieve much this year. Like I know they've done it in the past, but they win games and they'll beat good teams, but then they'll lose a game that they probably shouldn't. So it's even. I mean, they are a team you wouldn't want to play in a first final, because they could come out and kick your butt and win by 40 points, and no one would be shocked. They've got to make finals first, so they still have to win enough games. But from the bottom half of the 8, which is where they're going to finish, can all of a sudden... So I did some numbers the other day, Roo. They haven't won 3 in a row yet this year. I think they won 3 in a row once last year, 3 in a row once the year before. Are they all of a sudden going to come out in finals and win 4 in a row against the very best to win a premiership? I say no, and you say that right now because the odds are stacked in my favour. Of course, there's always that slight possibility, but I think that's just them, and they might sneak into finals and they might be a danger, but can't see them winning 4 in a row to sweep the competition and win the flag. But it's the Dogs.
2016?
Unless that's what everyone wants to go back to, 2016. And it's the only time it's happened in 25 years, but we still bring it up like, hey, it can happen.
yeah. All right. Hey, what about the West Coast job? Obviously, Adam Simpson goes on the weekend along and as a part of an appropriate send-off for a premiership coach. What about the job now looking ahead? For a young assistant coach, you're looking at the Eagles, massive club. Obviously, any other time in the Eagles' history, you would say a really well sought-after position. But is it a seat that is going to get hot too quick, and you might not have time to actually see what is going to be a long rebuild through, because the pressure will come after 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because there would be a school of thought, and rightly so, that if there's an opportunity like a big club at West Coast and you're an aspiring AFL coach, well, why not? Why aren't you applying and going for the job? But you just wonder whether there are some assistants that maybe have a bit more confidence or feel that they will get a job, that you're a bit more selective with which role you take. Because this West Coast role, they're going to be down the bottom for a number of years. Their young talent is still a stack away off. It's still relying on their senior players who are 30 plus that keep them competitive. It's going to be a long slog. So unless you had real confidence the club are going to back you in for 5+ years, it's a job that you're thinking this might be your only chance, and you might only get 3 or 4 years at it. We've seen a lot of coaches really that get the first crack at it, take over a bottom team. They do 3-4 years, David Teague and Reece Shaw, and, there's coaches all throughout history, and then they're gone, and that's their one and done chance. Do you just wait? Because in a couple of years, it feels like the window's going to open for a lot of clubs. There's a lot of talk about Chris Fagan and how long's he got at Brisbane and when it's time for change. Luke Beveridge at the Dogs. Is Chris Scott's time, when's he going to start to think about moving on? There's John Longmire. If you're Dean Cox, said, do you just hold fire if you're a really aspiring senior coach and wait for some maybe more opportunities that are going to present and lead to a more success straight away? or do you take the rebuild and take the big club? I don't have an answer. You've got to be in that situation to know, but, gee, what would you do? If you wanted to be a senior coach and West Coast said, we're keen on you, do you look at it and go, I might just wait for maybe a list that's probably ready to go a bit sooner, or you just take whatever's available?
No, I think you'd have to be really, really confident in your own ability to turn down a senior role. I mean, how many times have we seen assistant coaches that were so highly spoken of and the expectation was that they were going to get a gig, like someone like Adam Kingsley, who, he's got the job now, but, once, twice, 3 times where it looked like he was going to get it and you never get it. Robert Harvey, how many times, and if you've not won back, there's no guarantee you're going to get the next one. So I think if you're offered the role, you've got to take it. You've got to hope you can turn it around quick.
Back yourself in and try and turn it around. Just as Sam Mitchell, quick shout out to him, doing a great job with this Hawthorn side at the moment. They are flying. Whether they make the 8 or not, it's going to be tight.
The least shocking development of the year is that Sam Mitchell's a great coach.
Yeah.
Oh, is there anything more obvious than that being the case?
Yeah, he's doing a sensational job with that group. And that is one team that probably is not relying on just superstar talent. They are relying on a team, and they're all playing good footy at the moment. Hey, we will take a break. We want to get into Real Talk, Shit Talk. But if you do have a question for us, jump on Instagram or on TikTok and hit us up. We'll be back right after this. If you're listening to Spotify, please hit the bell to be notified when we drop a new episode. And you can check us out on Instagram. We're going to play a bit of Real Talk, Shit Talk. I'll fire some comments that have been made the last 24, 48 hours, Rui, and see what you think. I've sort of put a bit of my own spin on this one. But off the back of Riley Thilthorpe's return for Adelaide on Saturday night, Max King needs to follow the same rehab program and come back next year looking like a big meat axe.
Oh, what do you keep going, Max, Joey?
Well, now it just ties in. He's going to have a long time off with injury.
Wow.
Riley Thilthorpe, a high talented draft pick. His body, hasn't been able to get right, but he came out. He looked like a man, like he had the big beard, big arms, kicked a couple of goals, and he's ready to explode now. The back end of the year. I would love to see Max King look like that. Not look exactly like that next year, but you know my point. Come out next year and just look bigger and stronger and more menacing.
More menacing? I'm not sure if he's ever going to look menacing. He's got, he hasn't got that.
What if he comes out? What if he comes out next year with a sleeve tat and a beard or something and just come on, Max.
What the shit are you talking about? As if that makes any difference. I'm only playing. No, I mean, his body, I think a bigger, bulkier version of Max King puts more stress on his body.
Okay.
I think that's a question they'll answer internally. I think what all St Kilda people want to see when Max King's come out is probably a good run at it first, some consistency. So whatever that looks like, to get his body in the best possible shape to be able to string together consistent games of footy. And then I think that'll flow and translate into more consistent effort.
Yeah.
More consistent effort, because that's I think what you want to see. You want to see that competitor come out in him every week when he's not hamstrung and restricted because he's worried about his body. And from there, I know I'll bang on about the forward craft. I'd love to see a big development in that over the off season as well. So beard and a sleeve tat, not too sure about that one, Joey. I reckon he'll be right, just getting some continuity. What about the Giants? Were they out of line, Joey, with their video mocking Isaac Heaney, or was it just a bit of fun?
See, you would have been in that camp. You would have said that's not on in your day, you old serious head. That's shit talk. That was fun.
I loved it.
Yeah, I know.
I
think we should see more of it. Yeah, it's just a bit of tongue-in-cheek banter. We get so serious about everything. I thought it was great. Just a little healthy rivalry.
Harley didn't like it.
Nah, he was a bit too serious, Tom. That would have been you in the old days. See, it's the old captain head. Tom Harley was a great captain. You as well. You got to relax and let it go. I thought it was great. Hey, you mentioned Sam Mitchell before, and you're a big rap. If the Hawks do manage to make finals, should he be coach of the year?
Oh, you could make a case. Absolutely. I think it's when do they announce coach of the year? It's before the grand final, isn't it?
Was it after grand? They normally always give it to the premiership coach, don't they? Or
well, no, I don't know, because I think the 3 years Clarkson won.
Oh yeah, he never won it.
I'm not sure or the 4 years. I'm not sure that he ever won it. Through that three-peat period. But look, I think John Longmire, he's an awesome coach.
Yeah.
I think there's a bit of taking for granted, some of those really good coaches, and so they tend to get overlooked, and so you look for the Cinderella and the fairy tale story. So, yeah, Sam Mitchell, you could absolutely make a case for.
Yeah, Chris
no
Scott's saying
doubt.
no one had Geelong in the top 8 this year, and Chris Scott's got him sitting, top 4, top 5. So, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, no, you can make a case for those guys. Last one for you, Joey. The Bombers, are they dry track specialists, and are they tough enough to win a final this year?
It's a good question, Rui. Showed some vision on first crack Sunday night. It's got me thinking. They've won 11 of their last 13 at Marvel, and I did some numbers. When they play in low pressure games, they're 7-2 this year. So they win those sort of circle work games and low pressure. When it's been high pressure games, I think they're 3-4. I had with a draw in there, and I think they've failed their last few tests. So the game against Melbourne on the weekend, Geelong a few weeks before that, Carlton before that. And when I looked at their last 2 wins, so Collingwood, and everyone sort of franked their form because they beat Collingwood, but that was one of the lower pressure games of the year. That game was a bit of circle work the way that it panned out. Collingwood, I think it was their lowest pressure effort under Craig McRae. And then the game they won before that, the West Coast Eagles, was at Marvel, and that was 120-90. It was a shootout. So, yes, for me, there are still question marks about the Bombers, and that's meaning their question mark to win a final. To play in a high-pressure game, MCG, win a final. There are still the question marks. We're going to be none the wiser this week because they play Adelaide under the roof at Marvel, which Adelaide played pretty well at Marvel as well, but Essendon are suited back at home. They'll be thereabouts in September. Don't worry. It's just whether they can stand up and win a final is what we're all going to wait for, and we're going to have to wait another 6 weeks till then. Just as we'll have to wait another 7 days to see you again, Rui. Appreciate your time. Make sure if you are listening that you do check us out and get on Instagram or on the TikTok. Make sure you do check us out on Instagram or on TikTok. Tomorrow, Abby Holmes will be with Jack Heverin and Nathan Broad. But until then, Rui, enjoy your Tuesday. Thanks for watching Footy Talk. Subscribe to the channel to watch myself and Rui every Tuesday.